Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts, Aaron and Parker. Alright everyone, welcome to episode 123 of Tokyo Wave. We're your hosts, Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. This week we are joined again by rural real estate expert Akiya Hunter and black metal baron Matt Ketchum.
Hey!
On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage.
Here are this week's top news highlights.
Japan Prime Minister Kishida orders COVID-19 classification downgrade in spring.
Japan's Echizen knives hit record sales amidst overseas demand from chefs.
Theft of classic sports cars rise in Japan, driven by overseas demand. This week in Japan.
All right, let's get started with our first top news item this week. Japan Prime Minister Kishida orders COVID-19 classification downgrade in spring.
Kyowa has reported that Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said on January 20th that he has instructed health ministry experts to promote discussions on a possible downgrade of the legal status of the novel coronavirus to the same level as seasonal influenza this spring.
In Japan, COVID-19 is currently categorized as a Class 2 disease, the same status as tuberculosis and avian influenza, and is subject to extensive measures, including limitations on the movements of infected people and their close contacts.
The change would be a big turning point toward the normalization of social and economic activities in the country, and would probably result in foreigners being able to enter Japan without PCR tests or quarantine.
Oh, hooray for that! Prime Minister Kishida also told reporters that his administration will review the rules of the wearing of masks and other measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
The Prime Minister added that the government plans to continue its vaccination program even after downgrading the disease's categorization.
Yay, we still get free COVID shots. Booyah. By downgrading COVID-19 to Class 5 under the infectious disease law, the Kishida administration could ease restrictions and reduce medical support for patients.
The government already suggests that people not wear face masks outdoors, but the majority in Japan continue to do so.
And I was just talking about this with some executives visiting Japan from overseas, and they were surprised that Japan is basically the only country in the world where people are still wearing masks everywhere.
Oh yeah. Even as we talked about last week, I just got back from the US and I got so used to not wearing masks, and it's taken me about a week to adjust to having my mask on all the time again.
Welcome back to Maskland! Maskland!
You know, I like this news too, because I was actually worried with the recent spike in COVID cases, is Japan going to shut down again? But it looks like the government's taking the opposite angle here.
Yeah, sounds like they like tourism money more than they like preventing the spread of COVID.
Seems to be so.
Indeed. Up next, Japan's Echizen knives hit record sales amidst overseas demand from chefs.
The Mainichi has reported that the Echizen knives forged according to centuries-old methods are proving to be a hit abroad, with many chefs visiting workshops in the town in Fukui Prefecture, central Japan.
Handmade and appreciated for their sharpness and durability, their popularity has grown through overseas sales demonstrations, including in the United States.
Echizen Ujihamono blades are forged by hand using techniques carefully passed down from around 700 years ago. The knives, despite being light and thin, are durable and sharp. So all that stuff from the Kill Bill movie was actually true, huh?
Yeah, they're sharp as shit, yeah. The knives are designated by the government as a traditional craft product, requirements for which include being an everyday object that employs traditional raw materials and techniques.
Echizen knives worth about 2 billion yen or $15 million were produced in fiscal 2021, more than triple the level in fiscal 2011, with roughly a quarter bound for other countries, mainly in Europe and the United States.
So, Aaron, a couple of years ago, I actually went to Tsubame Sanjo in Niigata on a video production project for a client, and I was able to watch one of the most famous knife makers in Tsubame Sanjo make these knives using traditional methods. And I have to say, it is the most badass shit I have ever seen in my entire life. Like,
oh, wow.
Whoa. It is very painstaking, difficult work, and you really have to. It's almost like, Shingon Buddhism, right? You have to learn from the elders, and you have to spend years perfecting your craft.
Right.
And the product is out of this world. Like, they were like showing us like it cutting through a piece of paper, and it was just like, it was like a samurai sword. I mean, it was ridiculously sharp.
I bet. That would be a really cool trip to go and see.
No, I really want to go back, and I really want to get a knife from the place that we filmed, actually. We're actually talking about just going there for fun and doing like another video project there.
Do they have like knife throwing classes you can take there?
No.
Darn. All right, up next, theft of classic sports cars rises in Japan, driven by overseas demand.
The Mainichi has also reported that the theft of Japanese sports cars is on the rise. Older models, mainly from the 1990s, are being targeted. This is occurring in part due to their massive popularity overseas, which continues to accelerate as popular media franchises glorify the vehicles.
According to Kanagawa Prefectural Police, 35 incidents of theft or attempted theft of sports cars took place between June and September last year, mainly in Yokohama. Targeted models included the Nissan Skyline, Toyota Supra, and Honda NSX, all of which were manufactured between 1989 and 2003. The total value of the thefts was in excess of 100 million yen, about $765,000.
And all of these cars have skyrocketed in value. I mean, 10 years ago, you could have bought a used Skyline GTR for about $50,000. Now that price is over $100,000.
Oh, wow.
Even in Japan. And overseas, of course, the price is even higher because it's an import.
Yeah.
And the Honda NSX is the same story. You could have bought one for about, $30,000 to $50,000 just 10 years ago. And now, I mean, if you can find one for $100,000, it's a steal. And, it really, as a car person, it makes sense because these cars are from the glory days of Japanese domestic manufactured sports cars, when all of the automakers wanted to have these halo cars, and they just put all of this engineering and technology and made these super efficient, super fast. Everything about these cars is awesome. And you really can't copy it in the current age because of all the emissions restrictions and this and that, and just that raw feeling is really what I think a lot of enthusiasts like about these JDM cars. But it is really sad to see that there are people who are actually stealing these cars instead of just buying them and exporting them, which in itself is a money-making operation.
No, for sure. During the same time period is when Japanese manufacturers started copying a lot of American guitars as well. So Fender didn't have official plants here, and wasn't producing here, I don't think, to the level they are now. But before Fender and stuff, the Japanese were really good at copying guitars and stuff too. And those guitars are worth a lot of money now. So.
Oh yeah, I mean I have a guitar from ESP, and while I continue to suck at playing the guitar, it is an absolute beast. So back to the stolen car situation. Last September, police arrested 2 suspects, men aged 57 and 58, on suspicion of attempted larceny after the 2 allegedly tried to steal a sports car that had been parked in an auto repair shop in Yokohama. The pair is suspected of committing over 10 additional thefts, but the rash of thefts has continued even after their arrest, leading police to investigate whether an organized crime element is involved. Top tip: probably yes.
One of the suspects confessed, saying that their motivation was to earn money and that there is a market for older model cars. One factor is that the value of the vehicles has been soaring, both in Japan and overseas.
And it's interesting because, when you export a car from Japan, there's a lot of paperwork and procedures. But, the docks are really big and, maybe just a few cars just pop into the container without any checks and get like magnet lifted onto one of those ships bound for somewhere far away,
I imagine this process has to be very quick. They steal the car and they go straight to that plant, right?
Oh, yeah. You got to get it in the container as quickly as possible because
like within 12 hours, 24 hours or something, yeah.
It's like that movie Guy in 60 Seconds.
Yeah. Nicolas Cage.
You showed me that meme where bad actor, good actor, and then what was it? Bad movie, good movie, and Nicolas Cage is in the middle.
Yeah, he's a bad actor and he's in bad movies. And his opposite is Leonardo DiCaprio, good actor and good movies.
No, but he's also a good actor in good movies. He was in the middle.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, Nicolas Cage was in the center.
That's right.
Because he can't really be classified anywhere.
Yeah.
Because his movies, and you know what? I would even put Steven Seagal in the center too. Because their movies are so bad that they're good. Yeah. Who was the guy at the top right? It was bad actor in bad movies. I remember Keanu Reeves was bad actor in good movies.
Yes.
Which people may agree, disagree with, of course. All right, and then next we have a special interview with our frequent contributor, Matt Ketchum, who's going to rip apart recent articles trashing the Japanese countryside.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Tokyo Wave.
So, Matt, as a rural real estate maven, recently you shared with me a Tokyo Weekender op-ed that trashed Tokyo Governor Koike's plan to give 1 million yen per child to families who move out of Tokyo, saying that the Japanese countryside is undesirable and people will not take the bait. What do you think about that?
It depends. The whole thing is, it's weird because to me it just doesn't reflect reality at all. The things that the article says, right? Sometimes they're true. Also, sometimes they're not. So it's like a blanket statement article that's not particularly well grounded in reality. Which is problematic because it's talking about everything outside of Tokyo. And this is like a very strongly, it's almost like ideology. It's a very strongly held belief by a lot of Tokyo residents that they've had it ingrained in them that straight up, get the fuck out of town if you don't live in Tokyo. You don't live in Tokyo, get out of here. You might as well just die or something. And so this article is making valid points depending on there's no reference. There's no source of reference, right? And so the whole article is really just kind of ungrounded. Another thing too is, if I'm not mistaken, that million yen number, well, most importantly, 1 million yen per child is what, $6,000, $7,000? What's that gonna do for your kid over? That's really not particularly attractive, especially when, if I remember correctly, it's 1 million yen over 5 years.
Ooh, I didn't
Oh, you don't just get 1 million yen.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember. I don't have the.
So Tokyo's gonna pay you in installments.
Yeah, so that's like maybe $1,000 a year. Like, come on, right? And so like this article is, again, I actually agree with it. I liked it because it calls out a whole bunch of the bullshit that happens in the countryside. I particularly remember them talking about like dammed, like concreted over lakes and stuff like that. There's a place in Gunma that comes to mind that has this exact problem. So there's a lot of shit out there that never gets shat on. And I think there is a time and place for really kind of, knives out kind of critique of the bad things that can and do happen in rural Japan, but they don't happen everywhere all the time, right? And that's the thing that this article doesn't do. It's extremely deterministic and extremely black and white, which just isn't cool, like it's not the truth.
Yeah, I also read the article and I really took umbrage at the fact that, he's calling out, all this concreting, and it's like, they didn't do it for fun. They did it for flood prevention. And the fact that it's not beautiful, of course, is, not by not making it is not by virtue of not wanting to make it beautiful. It's to, do the job at minimal cost. And that's where, the government probably should have thought a little bit harder about how to prevent, floods, obviously using technologies such as, concretes and walls and whatnot, but at the same time, make it aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
And that's what they didn't do. And that's why there are parts of the countryside that, as the article points out, are less than desirable.
I mean, hideous, I think, is a good word.
Yeah, I mean, they don't look nice.
Let's not mince words.
Let's not mince words here. They don't look good. But that applies to certain areas and just those certain areas. And so to say the entire Japanese countryside is concreted over, ugly, and undesirable is bullshit.
Yeah. Also, too, though, I think that if there's umbrage to be taken on my end, I just think the whole focus on the family thing is just give up the goat. Like, that is a terrible idea. Honestly, don't get families to move. Don't try to get families to move to the countryside. That's a ridiculous idea. Families need hospitals and education and resources and supermarkets and daycare and all of these other things that cities are really good at providing, right? I'm not out there in rural Japan running around in Inaka screaming like, brr, the cities are off. No, cities have value. Cities have function. Right, they're really good for families, honestly, as well as kind of trade businesses too. What they should be doing is targeting younger, probably more IT-leaning individuals who maybe they're married but they don't have kids, maybe they're single but they're dating, maybe they're just not dating, or whatever. Your romance love life doesn't really. Basically, they need people who have less restrictions placed upon them necessarily, right? Having a family is a huge responsibility. Cities serve those responsibilities very well. Trying to get families to move out of the city, in my mind, is one way. If I were a family man, I would actually probably be kind of offended by it, honestly, because, not to, wave my I'm offended flag, but like, the Japanese government is already saying, hey, people who live in Japan have more kids, more kids, more kids. And then they have the audacity to, once you do that, go to a place that doesn't meet your needs.
Yeah, and it's also, a little bit more complicated than that. I mean, obviously, people who have families, I mean, it also depends on age, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if they have very young children, moving to the countryside is an option because there are places in the countryside with good schools.
Right.
And obviously, more parks, more greenery, and it's a different lifestyle. And, there are really good schools in the countryside. I've seen them. And, people go to prestigious universities from these schools. And so, if the child isn't in school yet, then that makes sense. But, especially in Japan, the whole thing about transferring schools and, like, for instance, if they're in their third year of elementary school, all of a sudden moving from Tokyo to some random countryside locale, I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. They might get picked on. I mean, they might have trouble adjusting. I mean, I don't think a lot of thought was put into this.
I think that they're like, it's honestly, I think it's very not good. I think it reflects, they're basically looking at the populace as like, we need more kids, give us a product sort of thing, which is like not the best stance for a government to take. Like, it's kind of dehumanizing, really.
I have a question about all this. It's interesting that, they're targeting families. Maybe you guys have heard about this, and I just watched a special on it. Net cafe refugees, and in Japanese they say net cafe nanmin, right? And also cyber homeless are like huge. There's a huge amount of people like this in Tokyo that make like less than $1,000 a month.
Right.
Why don't they try to help those people out and get them into places in the countryside?
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I really get the impression over the decades now, Japan Inc. won't shut up about children. They love children are gold. They can't and I mean, that's not to say that children aren't valuable, right? But the fact is, they're just blinded by kids. We need more kids. We love kids. Give us kids. And they can't, I don't think, like Parker said, I don't think they're even considering alternatives or stuff. They're just obsessed with kids. It's kind of creepy.
Because right now, the economic situation is for a Japanese person to successfully make a family, make it in Tokyo, have kids.
Right.
That's a huge financial burden right now.
It's totally ridiculous, too, on that note, to suggest that, like, to focus on the family. How? Most people don't make enough money, or they don't want to, or they're traveling a lot, or telework, or whatever. Like, focus on the family. You're not paying attention, dude. Like, the world works in a much different way than you have convinced yourself that it does. And because of that, it's a failed project. And I mean, look over at least the last however many decades, tens of years, every time they do this, it fails. Something's not working with their recipe.
Yeah, it's like they make these policies without talking to anybody.
Yeah, I'm
it just really reeks of that, right? And so, with the whole countryside, move to the countryside thing, I think there is, a silver lining in that, of course, Japanese people as well as foreigners from around the world are interested in moving to Japan, and there is increasing interest in rural Japan. So I feel like this movement can happen more organically, but I think every time the government tries to sort of stoke it, it just sort of makes that knee-jerk reverse reaction, because it's just so weird and so, like $1 million yen. I mean, what's that?
Like, nothing about this, if you think about it critically, nothing about this program it makes sense if you want it to fail. If the goal was, let's say something and make sure that it never happens, then they would be very good at what they do. But that's probably not what they're aiming for, I'm guessing. The entire thing is a non-starter, like 100%.
Yeah, so basically, in conclusion, the op-ed was obviously, I think written by someone who really doesn't know the Japanese countryside. Like, he was mentioning one place in Nagano that he went to. Like, what is that, the first time you ever went to the countryside? Why don't you go to the nice parts?
Yeah.
But, there were some good points raised. That said, on the whole, very, one-sided, very slanted. And if you're going to make a criticism like that, where are the recommendations? It's the op-ed, right? There was no, this is what they should do.
Yeah, it's kind of just like a toothless old man who's angry at you article.
I feel like if you're going to write an op-ed and say something is wrong, you got to have a recommendation.
Get off my porch. I dislike Inaka. That's honestly, scrap the whole article. You could say it in 3 words. I dislike Inaka. Done.
Yeah, that's basically, yeah. I mean, could have read that in 5 seconds.
But I mean, I'm actually happy with that article in a strange way, in that, one, I think it highlights problems that often get kind of brushed under the carpet, or whatever the phrase is I'm looking for. Like, there are real issues, not just aesthetically, but also business practice wise. A lot of that construction is, what do you call it? Like, not a grift, but I mean, the construction industry here. There's a whole lot of that word that I'm looking for that describes a certain type of money.
Pork barrel?
There we go. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. So, and that's an issue that, the first step to fixing a problem is being aware of it. There's also kind of, Parker, like you were saying, certain technologies. Is concrete the best way to prevent floods? Maybe in 1970 it was. What about now? What other options do we have? That conversation isn't happening, right? And so this article, despite being a blanket statement, which I dislike, does bring up valid points for the parts of the country that have quite literally been just uglified by the national government knowingly.
And
right?
it's sad because, Japan is a capital of all of these different coatings and paints and like special materials. And there's so much they could have done with just a little bit extra budget to make it safe, but also make it not ugly. Right. And why is that never part of the conversation? Because even the new things I see getting built, it's all the same story. It's just concrete and it looks ugly.
Exactly.
I mean,
and so I'm grateful and thankful for this article and really the writing was like, damn, how to. It was kind of mean. I liked it. It calls out in sort of an incensed voice at, the disgrace that the uglification of otherwise beautiful rural Japan is, right? That conversation needs to happen more. I also think that by its nature and the conversation that we're having about it, it's calling attention to the whole kind of Tokyo as the center of the universe kind of mindset and whatnot, which is another conversation that I really think happens. The fact is, like, everybody in their circumstances has different needs. And, Parker, like you were saying, if number one, if you have a kid, number two, if they're in like 3rd grade or something, yeah, relocating them from Tokyo to some rural place is a really bad, like, don't do that. Probably. I mean, if it works for you, then it works for you. Okay, whatever. But like, that just generally mostly doesn't make any sense. Whereas if you're, a single person in their late 20s who has a remote work gig with, I don't know, Google or something, like, well, yeah, go out, have some adventure, do some cool shit while you're, coding or whatever. These conversations need to happen a lot more. And so I had a strangely positive reaction to an article that at least in the past, I feel like I probably would have been kind of like not happy about, but I did appreciate it. And there seems to be a number of other similar articles that are coming out recently. So I'm a little bit, honestly, like kind of, looking forward to where this could go.
So, Matt, you just said something interesting, like people that work at Google who can code, right? They can work anywhere. So obviously they have easy access to Inaka. They could even live in South Korea while they're working for a Japanese company. How many Japanese, though, are there that like have this kind of ability? Because just in my experience, like most companies, the engineers, the software engineers are always foreigners. There's not a lot of Japanese that have this kind of flexibility to be 100% remote.
Well, I mean, I don't really consider things in terms of nationality at this point. The fact is, what we're getting at is rural revitalization, right? And the fact is, that's what getting people out of Tokyo accomplishes. And the fact is that for the last few decades, right, kind of the largest percentage of the national population, which is Japanese people, Japanese citizens, have not been doing this for one reason or another, right? And so you just need to get butts and seats, really. Whomever is able to get to rural Japan and successfully and profitably and like live there well Get them to do that. If that's Japanese people, great. If it's Chilean people, awesome. If it's Americans, great. Although they should probably be a little bit more quiet than they normally are. But yeah, the point is, I don't care where they come from. If you can facilitate anybody moving out to a rural area and have them turn that into a success story, it should absolutely be pursued. Families are not going to do that by and large.
Good point.
So, Matt, what recent adventures have you been up to in the Japanese countryside?
Nagano. In a town called Shinano, which is near Lake Nojiriko. There's a little village out there by the name of Tomigahara, which is very charming. Very small. If I remember correctly, it's like 200 people or something. Anyway, they are wonderful because they have realized, oh my goodness, we have to do something about this. Otherwise, we're just going to disappear. So they've been carting me up there to basically work with them on developing kind of a framework and kind of a roadmap for digitizing the community, as well as, kind of growing. The ultimate goal is to grow the community. But if it's kind of like with the government, if you just say, give me more people, that's not going to happen. And so I've been showing them, okay, there's content production. You need to have a web presence. There's farming initiatives like the Wolf program that help get young people up here. There's that hotel over there that part of the local community, the owner of which is one of the leaders of the local community. That's a great place to get younger people and travelers to stay, and you can show them around and give them, food and whatnot. This, that, and the other thing. Really kind of developing, honestly, a critical understanding of the current landscape that is Tomigahara and Shinano City, from which we can then start saying, oh, okay, because this, that, and the other thing, it would make sense for us to do this and not that. And so we're kind of right now in the process of determining what, we're not even yet at what this, like the thing that we should do is. We're in the process of kind of basically understanding the wide kind of the spread of assets that are Shinano City, right?
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of Japanese rural municipalities really don't do enough, is take a deep dive into what it is they have and really try and promote themselves in an attractive way. It's like, move to the countryside. It's like, well,
yeah,
where?
what the hell am I going to do?
Where?
Right? I'm looking at the heat map that I've created for them right now. And just looking at where the Akiya, the abandoned houses within Shinano City occur, that is expressive of a few things, right? Number one, well, okay, there's infrastructure there. Also, it's kind of curious because, geez, there's a bunch of houses and properties kind of clustered together. What's up with that? Why is there a cluster there? Turns out those tend to be besso communities, right? And not actual houses. And so one thing that we're working on right now is going to the municipal office and getting details on, seeing if we can get details on the occupancy rates of the bessos, because having those standing there, but frequently there's, one person who owns it and they come up there for 3 days at New Year's. Other than that, they don't do anything. So that might not be an opportunity to force them to sell. Wouldn't want to do that. But it could be an opportunity for us to understand, well, gee whiz, what if we assisted them in understanding the merits of, getting a Minpaku or Airbnb license, and then we can have more people coming up here and having good experiences and go from there, sort of thing. Also just understanding, where transit, for example, where restaurants are in, with regard to local transit, right? Sometimes there's a really great area that has a bunch of awesome food, but it's mysteriously very difficult to get to. That kind of doesn't help anybody out. But these are the kind of things that we have to consider. And Parker, you're right. Wow. Local municipalities don't know. It's like they're just walking around with their eyes closed and their ears shut.
I think it really has a lot to do with the fact that public servants just are not communications professionals, and they try and do so many things internally, I think, and that's partially due to budget. And even when they do outsource, they outsource to local people who are using old methods and just really sort of, perpetuating the same message that they've been saying for decades. And, you know, if it was going to work, it would have worked 10 years ago. You know, why are they saying the same thing? You know, why aren't they changing their story? Why aren't they creating a narrative?
It's honestly, it's extremely concerning to me because I don't think it's that extreme to say that it's like they're living in a dream. Like they are like critically disconnected from reality. Like it's a problem.
It's not all bad though. There is a program called, it's like basically translated as Rural Revitalization Helper Team, and they'll hire these people and pay them for X number of years to go to a local municipality and basically submit some sort of business plan on how they're going to revitalize the local community. And if that infrastructure is there and these people succeed in doing something that actually moves the needle, then a lot of them tend to stay and become advocates for the city. And this sort of program is actually very interesting. And I want to see more of that in more municipalities across Japan, but I think it really is limited to certain areas. And, you know, some places have that infrastructure and are doing really interesting things. You know, the town that I created a sister city relationship with, Tono and Iwate, is doing some amazing things right now around promoting Tono as a local destination. And they're doing a great job. They've got great photos. They've got great internet content. It's amazing. But that's not happening in other places. That's not happening in a lot of other places. And that's really the core of the problem. Without that content, without that persuasion,
absolutely,
nobody's going to come.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, I use this anecdote a lot, but there's a whole lot of really low level IT education that needs to happen. And one thing that I do all the time is in rural spaces, especially, iPhones are pretty common in Japan anyway. But I mean, regardless, like both iPhone and Android have like the rule of thirds grid that you can like activate when you're taking pictures. It's just a great way to like subconsciously get your eye to line things up in frame so that you just naturally take better pictures. Most people don't have that activated. And so just saying like, oh, hey, by the way, if you'd like, click that button in the menu and then turn on the grid and here, now you're going to take better pictures. Done. That took all of 3 seconds, right? So little things like that, you know, how to use stuff like Unsplash, I think is an absolutely outstanding resource for regional promotion. Obviously web presence, web design and stuff like that. You know, Squarespace is something that's pretty easy to use if you want more functionality using WordPress. Either one is kind of fine. I sort of prefer WordPress, but whatever. Just YouTube and videos and editing, showing people how to use iMovie. I mean, we're not talking about you need to learn Python and fucking, you know, a bunch of other language. No, like the shit that you have right in front of you is a tool that you just need to spend 5 minutes to learn how to use, and then you can make attractive stuff.
Yeah, like the tools you just described are like the basic set of tools that come with any Apple product.
Yeah.
And they're literally made so that anyone, you know, your grandma can use it and make awesome looking stuff. And they're even limited in a lot of the functionality too, because they don't want you doing advanced stuff.
Exactly.
They want to make you do it a super simple way, the way it's very easy to understand as well.
And I've noticed there is a strange prominence in rural communities of like really misguided jury rigging things.
Oh my
God. And I
God.
was like, wait, that simply doesn't make, you can't do that. Like that's impossible. Yikes. Stop doing that.
That's kind of hilarious.
Yeah, things like this. I remember another time in Yugawara, they were promoting an event or something. They were trying to make a flyer. I won't get on the design of it, but they were using it definitely wasn't a design or like, I think it was like, fig. No, it wasn't. I forget what it was, but it definitely wasn't made for like making posters. And they're on their computer, like looking like they're working really hard. And I literally just whipped my phone out, went to, not Unsplash, but, Canva, like what I dropped the colors that they were using for the fonts and everything. I ran the font through a what font is this script, color dropped the color palette. And within like 5 minutes, I made the better version of the flyer just on my phone. Right.
Does Japan have like a rent IT guy service where you can like rent someone who knows how to use? This isn't even an IT guy, by the way. This is like someone that just knows how to use their computer.
Yeah, exactly. That would be probably useful, but I don't know if that service exists. I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, that's a real problem that Japan has right now is there really is a lack of IT literacy. And unfortunately, the smartphone boom, I think, has contributed to it. So
absolutely.
A lot of people know how to use smartphones, and they've become so smartphone centric that, a lot of people don't even have a computer anymore. They just do everything on their smartphone, which, for simple tasks like email and chatting with your friends and looking at social media is fine. But when it comes to, actually producing something like a website, I mean, you could do it on your phone, but it is a royal pain in the ass.
Yeah.
What's funny? China has the same thing. It's all on their phone, and Chinese are overwhelmingly using their phone to produce content to run their business. Granted, they have a lot more powerful apps that, that are commonly accepted and used by everyone. So,
and approved by the Chinese Communist Party.
Exactly. I mean, WeChat is the biggest example, right? You can do everything on WeChat.
Except for talk about Tiananmen Square.
Yes.
And Winnie the Pooh.
So yeah, that's another funny thing about the whole conversation around IT literacy is I feel like the general or like the general understanding of what IT literacy means is again like Python and Django and Rust and whatever coding basically, right? I mean, it can include that, yes, but it also includes like, oh, geez, you didn't know that you could turn the grid on your phone on to take better pictures. Yeah,
and I mean,
simple shit.
Teaching people how to use WordPress. I mean, you do it in a few days.
Yeah.
Also, you didn't know that if you didn't know something, you can Google it.
Right.
Oh my God, you can Google it?
Or now you can use ChatGPT, but as we've also discovered...
ChatGPT, what? What does that even mean,
What
Matt?
is that?
I'm already confused.
My God.
You've confused
me,
and I don't want to use that tool now.
Let's go on a mid-journey, and I'll show you. Ha, 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 ha. No. But yeah, I mean, like, that's the other thing. Like, I'm terrified, actually, of, like, through my adventures in the countryside, working with people, lovingly showing them how to use things, right? I am, however, also very aware of the extremely low level of IT literacy with regards, again, to kind of quote unquote simple to use things, which ChatGPT and other AI products that have recently come out, and they're going to miss the boat on that if they're not careful, like really careful, which is a terrifying prospect because, like it or not, that sort of technology is like extremely powerful. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you don't know what to do with that, if like a vast majority of a country's population doesn't know what to do with that, you want to talk about brain drain, like, ugh.
Yeah, it's, I mean, Japan has had this big push towards DX or digital transformation. It's a huge buzzword in Japan right now. And it's really funny to kind of watch this unfold because they're talking about digital transformation. But before you can have digital transformation, how about digital literacy? It's like, you can't digitally transform the country if they don't understand how to use the tools.
Yeah, there's this strange kind of magical thinking that I've been growing more and more allergic to over the years and whatnot. Of like, honestly, I don't even want to hear catchphrases anymore because I know that if I hear it, it's bullshit, right? But if I don't hear it, that means maybe somebody's doing something about it. But the digital transformation thing, I think, is a complete joke, right? The best anecdote that I think we have is that Kono Taro is kind of a good tweeter. Like, that's the big win of the DX conversation. Like, that is a failing grade, my friend. Like, That's pathetic, really.
At least someone in the Japanese government's good at Twitter because, Twitter is kind of like the top social media platform in Japan.
Right. It's also like 15 years old or something. Like, who cares? And even if it was an impressive thing, it's still one example of one person doing something neat, maybe. That's quite the opposite of impressive. It's disappointing at best.
We've got some work to do. So, Matt, you're also quite well versed in blockchain technology and knowledgeable about cryptocurrency, having graduated from the Wharton School's program, Economics of Blockchain and Digital Assets. What do you think about the sudden bankruptcy of the FTX exchange and the damage that it did to crypto markets?
Oh, it's hilarious. Saw that one, I guess, coming. I mean, it's crypto. Look, it's trading. Come on, right? Like the whole, there's this strange like confluence of crypto financial trading and then like other blockchain stuff. Like the two can be very, very separate things. But I mean, the FTX thing, good. I'm glad for it. I don't like that. Like the direction that they were going in. Interesting. It's kind of been interesting watching all around this in Japan specifically. FTX shat everybody's bed, actually.
I mean, so many people lost so much money. I mean, it's really sad.
It's awful. And the fact that like white collar crimes are treated as lesser than blue collar crimes to me is just like totally absurd. Like that dude, that company, and also too, it's not just that dude, it's the company, it's multiple people, right? Literally destroyed countless lives, like forever. It's not like, oh, they broke a bone and then it'll heal in 6 months and like it's okay, right? Like literally, you might as well have just like slit their throats. Like he's a terror.
I mean, can we bring back like tarring and feathering?
Oh, it's funny that you say exactly that phrase because that is the phrase that got me Twitter banned for the first time.
Really? You can't say tar and feathering on Twitter?
No, and we were talking about FTX and I made some joke about like, oh, they should, I think I said like they should bring back tarring and feathering. And then I got Twitter banned for a week and I was like, God damn. Anyway, and that was after Elon took over too. So interesting.
Damn.
Yeah, interesting.
So much for free speech.
But it's been very interesting watching what's happened in like the aftermath of FTX doing what FTX did, because almost at the same time, Binance, which is a Chinese company, right, bought up Sakura Exchange, which is a Japanese crypto exchange. So now Binance, the world's leading exchange, has license to crypto in Japan. And then also too, a whole bunch. Most recently, Coinbase just dropped out of Japan. Kraken has dropped. Like all of the major Western crypto orgs are leaving Japan, and then you've got Binance coming in. And there's already, I can't remember, there's 32, I think it's 32 licensed. I forget the correct term, but basically like licensed exchanges in Japan. I think it's 9 or 10 of them, not including Binance, are already Chinese. And so now Binance is coming. Like that to me is just like kind of a power play.
It's kind of scary if you think about it.
Yeah, especially when you consider that a lot of folks in rural regions, this kind of brings in the IT literacy thing again, are asking about investing in NFTs because they're scared about the crashing yen, right? And so like, oh, you can play that one out in a number of ways, but like, oh my God, what if like Binance takes all of the aging Japanese people in the countryside? What if Binance takes all of their money or something like that?
Yeah, it's pretty scary stuff. I really, crypto has always been this sort of thing that's on the sidelines of my mind, and I've never invested in it, but obviously in conversations with you and other people, it's a very interesting and new development. Obviously, people have made and lost a lot of money on crypto, and it just continues to grow. But it goes back to that IT literacy thing. So many people, not just in Japan, but around the world, don't know anything about crypto, but they're buying crypto. It's like not knowing anything about stocks and buying stocks. I mean,
it's a really bad idea.
Not a good idea.
It's a really bad idea. And I mean, this has been a problem for a long time too. I can remember when I was back in Seattle, I was doing a lot of educational work on just like, oh, you don't know how to set up a wallet, or you don't know the difference between a hard wallet and a cold, or I'm sorry, a hot wallet and a cold wallet, right? Or hardware wallet, whatever you want to call it, right? And like safety about protecting your investment. And like why it makes sense to not keep all of your assets on an exchange like FTX, right?
Yeah, I mean, if those people had moved their crypto to cold wallets, they would be fine.
It would not have been a problem for them.
Yeah, but a lot of people didn't, apparently.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in Japan, too, like it's kind of hard to tell the numbers because last I checked, it's somewhere between like 2 and 4% of the national population has any exposure to crypto, which honestly like doesn't tell you very much because that's literally just accounts that are based in Japan. It might be one person who has 100 different wallets. Like, I don't know how many users are in there, so you can't really calculate like how many people that is. But two, investing in crypto for financial gains in Japan is a seriously bad idea because basically, unless you have international bank accounts that are not Japanese, right? And you're basically just trading in non-Japanese jurisdictions, you're as an individual faced with up to 55% capital gains tax. Like there's no reason for anybody in Japan to invest in crypto if they want to make money. Right. And then two, even as not an exchange, but as a blockchain organization that issues a token or a coin, you have to be able to back up fully half of your valuation in fiat money. Right. So if you've, Bitcoin 2.0 or whatever you want to call it, and it's valued at $10 billion, like you need to have 5 billion in the bank to back it up in order to be legal. That's one reason why exchanges are so popular in Japan, and you don't see very much IT or very much in the way of blockchain development and deployment, because it just bleeds the company dry before it can even get out of the gate.
Damn.
Yeah, it's super problematic, which also, this honestly very much reminds me of the conversation we were having about the family thing and then moving to Inaka, right? It's like the Japanese government is pretty interested in blockchain. They talk about it a lot. There's the Japan Blockchain Association, right? The JBA. They're a laughing stock.
DMM putting ads in Shibuya everywhere.
And they're saying blockchain,
Bitcoin.
but nobody could fucking use it. It's not going to go anywhere if you don't tell anybody how to do it.
They just
shut your fucking mouth.
We were talking about this before, Matt. They kind of just buy it and it just sits there. They don't really do anything with it at all, right?
They're not even buying it, so far as I know. I mean, the one interesting sort of it's not that hard to buy in Japan because you can buy it at Lopi, right, at convenience stores, so you can get it. But that means that it's necessarily going to go on into an exchange, which isn't. If you don't know how to get it off the exchange, then that's problematic, right? But yeah, people don't know what to do. Also, too, there's only I think it's like 16 coins that or tokens that. It's a little bit more than that, but really like all of the registered exchanges, the registered ones in Japan, not the centralized exchanges, the CEXs or SEX, versus the decentralized ones or DEXs. The CEXs, the Japanese domestic CEXs, I think maximum it's somewhere around like 25 assets that you can buy, and that's on not Coinbase. That's not even Japanese.
CoinCheck?
That's what I was thinking. But the other one, Bitflyer. Bitflyer has the most robust portfolio, but it's not very robust, right? And so again, in order to access other tokens that are more interesting, you necessarily, if you're trading in Japan, need to get onto a decentralized exchange in order to access them or open up foreign bank accounts, right? So it's just, even if you understood everything that I just said, it's complicated. Why would you do that?
It's very difficult for Japanese to access it and to,
I mean, it's really aggravating though, honestly, because it's indicative of what I really kind of consider like the distribution or like promotion of like false hope campaigns, right? Like, here's this cool thing, blockchain. It's awesome. You should do it. But we don't know how to do it. You didn't tell us. No, you should do it. Keep doing it. It's okay. But we don't understand.
This goes back to the tech literacy conversation.
Yeah, it's it's really sad to see so many people investing so much of their money in something that they really have no clue about.
Yeah, I've talked with people all over about NFTs and stuff, about minting, about what they are, about what they can do. I mean, there's up in Sapporo, there's a temple. I forget its name. There's a number of temples actually that have been getting into NFT production, but they do it terribly. Like, it's not interesting at all. It's like Omamori and things like that, but it's literally like the same picture, it's the same description. It's ridiculous. It's a terrible. They did a terrible job. But yeah, even talking with people about, they just know that NFTs are a thing that apparently you can purchase, and there's money involved somehow.
Wow.
You know, Matt, a second ago, you kind of joked about Binance, like taking all of the elderly people's money in Japan. Looks like on LinkedIn, they're hiring head of elderly facing product sales and life insurance services, Japan.
Oh, shit.
Sorry, that was fake news, but.
Oh, was it? Oh, you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. Oh, that was a good one.
I just thought, what if, man? What
Dude.
if?
That was a good
That's
one.
going to pop up, though, is
Oh,
it not?
man. You totally had me fooled.
Yeah.
Oh, my
God.
And on that bombshell, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much, Matt, for joining us again. I think we went all over the place, but it's always a fun time.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it again soon.
Thank you, Matt. Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.